Harry, my friend, welcome to the podcast. It's great to connect with you.
It's so awesome to be here, Jeremy. What's the good word with you?
It's funny you said that. I want you to tell me about that phrase. I noticed when I listen to your podcast, you always start with that. Tell me about that phrase.
What's the good word?
Yeah, you start with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Years ago, I got sick of "How are you today?" or "How's it going?" I got sick of that. And then what I also didn't like was there are people that would respond negatively, and they go, "Oh, I'm having such a hard day." So I like optimism and positivity. I don't, there's enough negativity in the world. So I said, I'm going to do my little part and help people be inspired to think about what is good going on in their life. So simply, what is the good word came out of that. And I've been using it for years. I can't even tell you how long, but I think it's been a very long time.
I love it. I just noticed that. And uh how do you see people responding to that?
Oh my goodness. It's really great. People actually think because it throws them off. They
Yeah.
can't say fine. They'll look at me sometimes and say, I don't know. And then other times they'll say, life is the good word. They'll come up with something. It's very rare. And, once in a while, I'll have someone give me a remark. I'm like, wow, that's the first time I ever heard that one. And so it's a conversation starter too, right?
100%. It is. I
Yeah.
think that's a great way to go about it. And I would say the good word for us here is, we're having this conversation. You and I have talked for a while now. We met, I think it was last year, through a mutual friend at an event, and then connected afterwards. And we've stayed in touch, and we've talked a lot, similar interests, and you know, I was actually talking to you about this journey of relaunching this podcast that I'd podcasted in the past and took a break. And as we talked, you gave me some great ideas and some encouragement. And in our last conversation, I said, let's just have a podcast conversation next time we meet. So our meeting today is that it's hey, let's have a podcast conversation and record it. And so I would say that's the good word, is that we're actually moving this thing forward, man. So I appreciate that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's so great. The whole idea, Jeremy, as you know, we have these great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we overthink them. We go down this path like, what if no one, with podcasting, what if nobody listens? What if, I say the wrong thing? What if no one likes my voice? I mean, I had all of these thoughts like, I don't even know enough people to podcast. I had all the negative thinking that goes on with us. And sometimes you just have to plow through it, or you have somebody that gives you a little nudge as you're standing at the
Yeah.
precipice. They come up behind you and go, dink. And you're like, all right, I'm in. So, what was it for you?
I think hearing myself talk to you about my desire to do this again and get going, and just through our conversations almost becoming maybe a little bit personally frustrated of why I wasn't moving forward. And maybe it was some of the things you mentioned. And so sometimes it's just having that conversation with someone else, hearing yourself say it out loud, and you go, so why am I not doing this again? Why am I not moving forward? Whether it's starting a podcast, whether it's changing certain habits in my life, whether it's this goal that I've had forever and I just won't take that step. I think sometimes you just need another person
Yeah.
to give you some, maybe it is a nudge, maybe it is some encouragement, but it's having someone else in your life, I think, to help get you going. That's it. Like you just said, man, it's taking a step. It's moving towards what you want to do. And so I think through our conversations over this last year, I've seen that about you, is that you're good about moving some things ahead. You were talking about podcasting yourself. I'm curious, what that process was like for you based on what you just said. You kind of maybe had these thoughts of who am I, who do I
Right.
know, how will I how will I even produce enough content? But one thing I know about you is you're always producing a lot of content. How yeah, he laughs because he knows he's got the videos, and I'm looking over here at your website, and man, you're always putting out these great shows through the Sales Made Easy podcast. How did you get that started, understanding and knowing these fears, these thoughts, these insecurities, whatever they were that were holding you back? What happened for you to make it happen?
The short answer is a friend asked me
Uh-huh.
to podcast. The long answer is longer answer is my friend asked me to podcast a couple of times.
Okay.
The first time I went, yeah, sure, and hoped that he wouldn't act on it. And he didn't. So months went by and he called me out. This is all during COVID.
Hmm.
And he called me out. I was super frustrated. This was probably one of the most frustrating times in my life was during COVID. A lot of thoughts were going on in my head. Was I living up to my potential? This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm, looking forward to retirement in like 10 years. It's like I was disgusted with myself. And so my friend, um, who we don't speak. I mean, we've known each other for years, but we're not like buddies, right? So I get this message on LinkedIn or Facebook. I got, Eric's mentions you in a post. So I listen to the post. It's a video, and he says, I'm doing this positivity challenge, and I want to get it started. It was 30 days. And the first person I'm tagging is one of the most positive people I know, Harry Spaight. And I teared up.
Wow.
That's how bad I was in a position, right? Because I went from this, I'm choking up now, but
Mm.
I was in such a state where I forgot how positive I was. And this was perfect. I'll continue. I'll try to get my composure here,
That's
but it
great.
was
Thank
perfect. It was what I needed. I felt
you.
like so I did this positivity challenge, and he said, like, so what I did was I did a video of myself. I said, I've never done a video on social media. I'm going to do a video right now. Tears in my eyes. It was a train wreck. It was. I'm looking down at the camera. I'm stuttering. It's like 3 minutes long. It's still there on LinkedIn. It's like, oh my god. I hope no one ever sees that. But it was me raw.
Mm.
And then after I did that, he says, would you like the podcast? I'm like, hell yeah. So,
Mm.
I mean, I was just all in at that point because I felt this was the creator's way of waking me up. Is that there was a channel here. This was the person he was using to say, wake up. And I had all the doubts. I said, I don't even know how to podcast. All the things we were talking about. I don't have a good voice. I'm not very
Mm.
conversational. Every negative thing I said, but I said, I'm going to do it because I'm going to support you. And that's what I did. So for a year,
Mm.
or maybe, yeah. So for a year, we podcasted together. And I was so inspired by the people that came on the show. And it's like you and I were talking earlier. It's like, what am I doing? This is what am I
Yeah.
doing? And I kept asking that. And so that's just led to a whole different persona for me, which is going back to my positivity and just
Mm.
really trying to bring good into the world from my source here. So yeah, long answer
That's
for a short
that's
question.
no, that's a wonderful, very open and transparent answer. I wrote down a few things because there was a lot there. So I'm curious to go back to what you said. You said you hoped he wouldn't follow through when he initially asked. Can you talk about that? Like, what was that thinking?
Oh man, yeah. So this is going. I have to put myself in the moment there,
Mm.
but really, sometimes you say yes and you say, "Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so when we didn't, it was relief because that was getting out. As you and I have had conversations
Mm.
about the comfort zone.
Mm.
When you say yes to something to me that was drastic like that, it's wow, I'm going out of my comfort zone and I like my comfort zone.
Mm.
So hopefully I don't have to go out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when he asked me the second time and I said yes, it's like, I'm just going to have to be uncomfortable. And once you go
Mm.
down the path of being uncomfortable and making the changes, um, it's just the next thing gets easier. You start seeing it's like, okay, so what's holding me back? I don't want to be uncomfortable. I've been uncomfortable before. I made the change. It's all good. And I can talk myself through it. So yeah, what's your thought on that? Is it you've
Well,
done similar things?
a poster child for it, I think, if I'm being honest. I mean that this is very powerful, I think, here because I think so many people can resonate with that. If we're being vulnerable and honest like you are, there is a comfort zone where we don't want to step out of. Even this is the crazy thing about the comfort zone. We don't really actually want to be there
No,
because
no,
of what you
yeah,
said. You
yeah,
weren't living up to your potential,
yeah,
but your comfort zone was, I guess, familiar and safe, and that going to your potential would stretch you, would challenge you, would put you in these positions of having to be, I guess, vulnerable and out there and maybe exposed in some ways. I think this is where so many people are today.
yeah, yeah. I am not a hero in any sense of this, right? There are people I look up to, and I know people look up to me, but I just say I'm everybody else.
Hmm.
There is nothing special. And it's just a matter of like if you want to do something, whatever it is in life, if you want to do something, you have to get comfortable with what's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If someone said, like I said years ago when I was in high school, I wanted to be a stand up comic. And I did comedy shows in high school. I did, one man get up in front of the audience and do my comedy routines. I didn't do that for the next 25 years. And it was just in the back of my mind. It's like, I'll never know what that was like. I'll never know what stand-up comedy was for me. And I never pursued it. Then I was in Washington, D.C., and I walked by the comedy club. And outside of the comedy club was 12-week comedy class for beginners. Without hesitancy, I dropped a few $100s, started going I went to the first class, Jeremy, and the comic said, you need to get out to the class. You need to get out and do open mics. Who's going to do it? And I went, well, I'm here. I'm going to raise my hand. He says, I will go with you. And we're going to go. And she told me the club. So in the parking lot of the club, I've got very little material at this point. It's an open mic night. He calls, or I call him, I'm like, are you here? And he says, I can't make it. I don't know if that was planned
Right.
just to get me out. But so here I was in the car and I had this decision to make. Do I go in or do I go home? And I went in and I was petrified.
Mm.
No friends,
Mm.
complete stranger, gave my name to the guy, here he's Spaight, and I'll do whatever, 5 minutes or something. I I've never been that nervous, right? But it was just such a rush of when you. I mean, there was some laughter. There's a lot of silence, but there's some laughter. So that is at my core. I mean, it's like you do
Mm,
things in life where you say, I'm going to do what is extremely uncomfortable. And you
mm,
walk into a bar with a bunch of comics and I'm going to do this, right? It's just what I want. I wanted, it's like I wanted to feel what it was like to feel to be a stand-up comic. And I pursued that for a few months and I learned a lot. But the point was, if I never did
yeah,
it,
yeah,
I would still be talking about what would that have been like? Why didn't I? I would have the regret, and I don't want regrets. And I don't think any of us want
yeah.
regrets. And so, like you said,
Mm,
we don't want to be in the comfort zone. And yet, we somehow, for some reason, can't get past this feeling of it's going to be awkward. People are going to look at me.
mm-hmm,
People may not laugh, or people may think I'm silly or whatever. But man, we're missing out on so much when we just
mm.
let that, take over, unfortunately.
That's a great story. What was it like in that moment where you had to decide, am I going in? Or because you could have left, there was no one with
Oh,
you. You could have just
exactly.
bailed, no one knew you. So do you remember what was it that said, all right, I'm going in?
I don't know if I remember, but I can see myself in my car and just looking at the dashboard, being tempted. It's like, do I turn the
Yeah.
key and go home? And it's like, no, I don't know what I said exactly, but it's along the lines like I said I wanted to do this. I got to do it. I can't make excuses. So I did.
Well,
Right. I've made excuses. I've made plenty of excuses in life, but that one I did it. I
you
mean, it
did it.
was it was a
Yeah.
25-year regret.
Yeah.
And I was given a chance. It's like, all right, put up or shut up. Don't be saying you did comedy when you really didn't. You did some skits in front of a few hundred people, but now's
Right.
your opportunity. See how funny you really are, Harry.
Right. I just love that again because you were there alone. Like you held yourself accountable to make that next step. I think
Yeah.
that says a lot in that moment, and because I think that's a metaphor really for a lot of what we deal with these days, where we're faced with a decision in front of us to do something that is out of our comfort zone, but we're able to totally bail on it, and no one would ever know because we might not tell people, hey, I've got this goal, I've got this dream, I've got this thing I'm working towards. We just keep it to ourselves. So if we don't act on it, no one ever knows.
That's true.
You know what
And
I mean?
yeah, 100%. I think in this case, now that you mentioned that, I'm sure the comic told me to go in and I'll be fine.
Probably.
Right. He
Yeah.
didn't say,
Yeah.
I'm sure he gave me some
Yeah.
encouraging
He was,
words.
yeah.
And that, looking back at that was the kind of the accountability partner,
Yeah.
right? Where sometimes we need that because you said no one would know, but actually he knew
He knew.
and he would have asked if I went in or not.
Mm,
And so maybe that,
maybe
thinking
helped.
back, maybe that was that little bit of accountability there may have been it. Or just go, I think there was more of that than me going home and telling my wife I didn't go in.
Didn't go. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That too would have been embarrassing. But she knows me enough that would have been she was like, oh brother, sure, whatever.
Here he goes. Here he goes again.
Exactly.
But it's a
But
great point though on that, even thinking through that little piece of encouragement and just driving this point home of we have ideas, we have goals. Who is it in our life that can encourage us and sometimes give us the kick that we need to get going, to take some action? So I think that is a great story to illustrate that. I wanted to touch on your book. I mean, you're an author. Well, a lot of people haven't written a book. We got Selling with Dignity, which is great, and you were kind enough to give me a copy after we first met. It looks like this was written in during COVID, right? So talk about that in light of what you said earlier of that was a frustrating time for you, but you were able to write a book.
Right. So the book, first of all, the book idea came 10 years earlier. This
Okay.
this is a little bit how
Hey,
I roll.
that's
The
okay.
comedy was 25
That's,
years. The book idea was 10 years.
but you did it.
And I
See, but
didn't
you
do it for
did it.
10 years. Okay.
You did
Didn't
it.
do it. Right.
That's
But
okay.
you're 100% right. I did end up doing it.
Yes.
So the podcasting led me to the uncomfortable.
Okay.
Right. So I was now in the discomfort or uncomfortable zone, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I was making change and becoming the positive guy again,
Mm-hmm.
looking at opportunities. And I was doing some meditation and journaling and really focusing on what my ideal life was. And I really didn't know what my ideal life was. So this was, I was up early in the morning. It was 0 dark 30, whatever that means, but it was early and it was dark. And I was just journaling with a cup of coffee and just started thinking about things I like to do and what my future. And so I pictured myself in my future and said, today I'm waking up and it's a beautiful day, blah, blah, blah. So I was doing this for weeks and still no results. Still, there's nothing going on, right? It's like, people, why do you journal? I'm not getting anything out of this. Is the kind of what my thought was as I chuckle about it. But what happened was not in journaling, but outside of the journaling on January 2nd, 2021, it was a day off still. I think that's how New Year's are celebrated, I think. And I just teared up. My wife was doing some gardening. She looks at me and says, "What's going on with you?" And I said, "I got to write the book." And it's just like this voice said, "Write the book you thought about years ago." And I knew it. So I literally, after my wife was like, are you okay? You're not dying, right? I went directly to the computer because this, in my mind, was the voice of God. Is like Moses. I mean, it's not as profound as getting the 10 Commandments and the burning bush, but it was the voice of God saying to Harry, do this. You have a message that will help people. Go do it. And it's like, I'm going to do this. So I literally got out of the chair, went right over the computer, started writing out an outline. I've never written a book before, folks. I didn't know how to write a book, but I was pretty sure I needed titles of chapters, and I had them in my head. They just flowed. It was like everything so my background of being a missionary and doing mission work in other countries and being very servant minded, getting into sales and being around people who are only about themselves. And not that all salespeople are like that, but they're really driven for money and you can really care about the customer that much. It was all about the money and, that world of profitability, gross margin. I mean, that's what I lived in for the past 20 years. And so I did that as a servant-minded individual. So I knew that my philosophical views of serving others could work in a Fortune 500 company that was driven by numbers and profit. I could do the same. I could hold on to my values and still succeed. And I said, there's a lot of people that don't think they can sell because they don't want to change their servant mindedness. And I'm going to help them. And that's what I wrote the book about, is to help those people, not the ones that just, they don't care about it. Everybody's a number. I'm going to make money no matter who I talk to. I don't care. If you're not interested, I'm going to go find the next person and get through you. You're wasting my time. That type of stuff. Not that everyone's like that, but the book is not for those people generally.
Yeah, 100%. well, we'll talk more about the book here in a second, but I wanted to ask, so how long did it take you then from that outline to actually complete it? Do you recall?
Yeah, it was. The book was published in early October. So it
Okay.
was 9 months from January 2nd to early October. And yeah, so our anniversary is October 8th. I was holding a book. So
And
that was, yeah.
what was
Well,
the I'm always interested in routines, just thinking
yeah,
through
yeah.
working towards a goal. What was the the daily or regular writing process for you? Was it I'm going to write for a certain amount of time, a certain amount of words? What
Yeah,
was the
there is
process?
nothing like that with me. Uh, I'm as free spirit of an individual as there is. So,
That's okay. That's
okay.
okay.
So what I did was it was a passion project. So
Yeah.
I woke up every day where I couldn't wait to write. Now, virtually every day. There are some days I just needed a break, but I
Yeah.
just was writing. And do you ever, I made some mistakes, but like, I didn't write in paper. I was writing on my computer.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I was writing on paper, but most of the times I was
Yeah.
writing on a computer in Word. Or first it was a Google Doc, and
Yeah.
it was a disaster. I'll tell you that story quickly. But the the writing daily thing was not for me. It was
Okay.
because that's a routine. I
Hmm.
don't like routines,
Mm,
but passion I like.
mm.
So if I was passionate about, like some days, I would write for 8 to 10 hours. I
Whoa.
just could not get. I get up to eat, but I mean, I couldn't get up, and I mean, I just was like so in the zone. Memories and things are just flowing, and you're in flow. You don't even realize it. But it started at 8 o'clock in the morning. At 6 o'clock, and I was like, "What are we gonna do for dinner?" And that was the way it worked. Then the next day, I might say, "Yeah, I got nothing today." And that's okay. I mean, who judges that stuff? Nobody, right? It's you. You get to decide if
Yeah.
you want to write a book and how you want to do it, which is the beauty of life. I wanted it done after. So after a couple of months, I spoke to a person that publishes books, and I asked him to take a look, and he says, "You got a book here, but it's a mess," because I had all these chapters in
Yeah.
Google Drive saved as each chapter, right? And he
Okay.
says, "Can you just put these in some kind of order?" I'm like, ugh.
Um,
But we did, and then eventually it started to take shape. And then over the course of months, and I would have days where I'm like, I deleted chapters, I just trashed them. And he said, don't do that again, right? Because the content is still good. He said,
yeah.
even though you don't like the chapter, save the chapter. So I
Hmm.
went back into the trash on Google and pulled stuff out. It's like,
Got it out.
okay, I could always use that content, but you learn. And then
Yeah.
I was happy with it. I said, I just want to be done with this because it's taking too long. And then it wasn't good enough. So I went back, right? So you want to be done. And it wasn't good enough. So I had all this back and forth going on. No one's going to read this. Oh, this is really good. It's crazy. But
Wow.
eventually it's
Yeah.
like, I got to let go and just
Yeah.
kind of let go, let God. And that's how it ended up.
And you did it. I hear you talk about that process and the 10 years. I just love though that you did it. And I think when we talk about goals, vision, dreams, whatever you want to label it, I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves sometimes. Oh, I got to get this going. I got to get this done now. And then for whatever reason, we don't act, and then we abandon it. I guess is what I'm saying. Is at some point, you can get frustrated enough that you're not taking this action that you know you need to take, and you're not living up to potential to the point where you do give up on the dream of comedy, the book. There's something to be said about the fact that you still hung on to it and you did it.
Yeah, I think this is the challenge that a lot of people have because I thinking through this conversation, we're going down this path of where I'm thinking that these are very similar topics that
Mhm.
were, 15 years apart,
Yeah.
right? Where it was the regret thing.
Mm,
Like I would have regretted if I never tried to stand up comedy. And because of the book, if I had that calling, I recognized it
mm.
because I went back 10 years earlier with couple of friends at a couple of different times who reminded me because I forgot that if this was a 10-year thing,
Uh,
I was reminded of it that I had actually told people I should write a book and it
mhm.
would be based on my mission and my sales. And I said, that's going to be a unique story. And I didn't write it. And then when I finally had the book out, two people said, Harry, you wrote the book you talked about 10 years ago.
Look
Remember when we were, it's like,
uh,
oh my goodness, that's
look at
right.
that.
I thought I just had the idea years
Mm,
ago, but I forgot that I actually had the idea and to the point where I was telling somebody. So when I had that voice again, when you say,
mm,
Jeremy, I mean, if you ever say, I should do this,
mhm,
where does that idea come from?
mm.
Right?
You-
When you say, I should do this, we need to listen
mm.
because that's when we're completely honest.
Yeah.
I should do blank. And when we hear what we just said, that to me is the voice of God.
Mm.
It's like you were being communicated with something that's deep within us. Like if we you see people that are like on the side of the road. Sometimes we drive by people all the time. We drive by people on
Yeah.
the side of the road. Sometimes we say, I should stop. Right. And you do that. And it's like, yeah, that was a great experience. I know I helped that person. I'm not saying we do that all the time, but you get the idea, right? We say I should stop and say hello to that person, or I should help. I see that person over there. I see that they're having, I should. And when we say I should and do, there's a reward to that.
Mhm.
What's your thought on that concept?
Uh, I would totally agree, and I would say I'm pretty good at the shoulds, uh, and having those promptings, but not always taking the action. And I think the reasons vary. I think you've touched on a lot of them, but I think if we're all pretty honest, we have a lot of those shoulds, and I think the challenge is how do we get past that and turn it into do.
Mm.
I don't know that I have the answer,
Yeah,
but I know
I'm not.
I know it's something we wrestle with
Yeah.
of what you've touched on, the fear, insecurity, what others will think, getting out of our comfort zone. And I think it goes back to again just like taking a step towards that should.
Yeah.
But you've done it with
Well,
some
I
of the
think,
examples
and
you
we
shared.
all have. We all have. If it's if we're in the church and we see someone that is older sitting alone, we say things like, "I should go talk to that person,"
Yeah. Yeah.
or "I should hold the door open for this person going into this restaurant," or um, I should ask if this person in the grocery store who is looking up at a something that's higher up, I should ask them if they need help. And we do those things without really thinking, right? They're little, tiny little
Yeah.
messages that we frequently listen to. And
Yeah.
if we can do anything off of this conversation, you and I, is the next time we use the should word, we need to listen to what we just said,
Yeah.
because we say it so, and I do the same thing. We say it so often in passing, like we don't take ourselves seriously. It's like, why did I say I should write a
Mm.
book? Or why did I say I should lose weight? Or why did I say I should give up drinking? Or why did I say I should be nicer to whatever, my parents, my children, or whatever, right? Why do we say I should? And because we know
Yeah.
that comes from deep
Yeah.
within.
Yeah.
And we know that's the path. I'm thinking. I mean, we may be. I'm going to do some research on this, but
Listen,
yeah.
you're hitting on something. And actually, as you're talking, I was just reminded of something from years ago. I want to say this would have been probably 7-ish years ago, something like that. That doesn't really matter, but just for
Mm-hmm.
reference. But I was on my way to an event. It was a conference I was just participating in, and I was running late, which sometimes I tend to do.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't build enough margin, and I think, oh yeah, there won't be any traffic.
Right.
I'll hit all the lights, which is not true in Orlando. So I'm close to my destination, but I'm late. And I get to this stoplight and it's right next to a gas station. And I see just around the corner on the cross street there, um, there's a lady who's her car is broken down and
Mm-hmm.
she's in the road. And I can tell, people,
Mm-hmm.
honk. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
you see there's a car broken down, but they don't care. And they're driving around. And here I am. I'm I'm at the intersection on the other street. Like I could have just pulled into the gas station right there. And to your point, I had the thought, I should stop and help this lady, but I'm running late
Mm.
for this conference I'm supposed to be at. Now, mind you, if I'm late to this, there's zero impact to anyone at this event. It's not like I'm the speaker.
Right. 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 Yeah.
So in that moment, I had a choice to make. And I chose to drive on and get to my event
Mm.
because of my needs in that moment,
Mm.
my
Mm-hmm.
um the fact that I was running late, and so I was
I
already
get you.
upset about
Yeah.
that. So I'm sharing that and processing that with you because I have never forgotten that moment,
That's
and frankly
weird.
it bothered me for
Yeah.
a long time, because for me to stop for 5 minutes and be one person who would get out and help this
Yeah.
lady, I could see she's on the phone, she's
Mm.
stuck in the road. I'm sure I could have flagged down a couple other people, like, come over
Mm-hmm.
here,
Right.
it'll take us
Yeah.
5 minutes, push this thing off the road
Yeah.
into the parking lot. And buddy, I didn't. And man, I'm not kidding you. I was pretty upset with myself for a long time.
Mm.
And even telling the story, I
Yeah.
go, what? Why would I have not taken 5 minutes out of my life? What? Because I was going to miss 5 minutes of a
Right.
talk.
Yeah.
It
Mm.
just an example on that thread there of what you're saying, of where we see these moments maybe as small, but I think
Mm.
collectively, when we do those little things that are the shoulds that get us, maybe it is a little out of your comfort zone. It's like, hey, I got to go
Mm-hmm.
talk to a stranger, offer
Yeah.
help. And they're like, what are you doing? Or who are you? I don't know what story we
Mm-hmm.
tell ourselves, but continually doing those little things add up to big things. And I think influence all areas of our life. And frankly, it just makes us better people who do good in the world and leave a better impression on folks. But it's interesting to talk about it, and then now just for that story to come up for me of, wow, what a missed opportunity.
Oh, it's so funny. I mean, not funny, but ironic. I don't know what the word is. It reminds me of how these things remain in us.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
the book I wrote, so this happened I was probably 19 years old. I wrote about it when I was 60-ish. So what is that? 41 years. I'm sure the person doesn't remember, but I was on my way to church at night, rainy night. The person in front of me at a stop sign was missing all kinds of opportunities to go. And I laid on the horn and followed the car for the next couple of miles into the church parking lot
Oof. Oof.
and went over and immediately apologized.
You did.
Right? Yes. The
Good.
that
Good for
stayed
you.
with me.
Good
What
for you.
a jerk, right? I mean, I was just thinking about what
Yeah.
here's a woman, a
Yeah.
young mother with a couple of kids in the back seat, rainy night. Here's a 19-year-old kid who knows nothing in life other than to lay on the horn,
Yeah.
probably gave her a jolt. Like,
Yeah.
who wants to have the horn blaring? It's just so awful. But it stayed with me.
Let's
It's
stay
like
with you.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I really ever used the horn in
That.
that kind of
Yeah.
moment of anger and
Anger. I
frustration
know.
again in my life, because it was such a,
But
anyway, but you remember these things,
you
like, right?
remember,
Yeah.
well, I said good for you because you did at least go apologize. I mean, there's something to be said for recognizing when we've messed up and acknowledging. So
Yeah.
there was that, but I can
Well,
totally
I had
relate.
the opportunity. Like, so if
Yeah.
that person that was stuck in the car and you
Yeah.
saw their face and saw them in the
Yes.
event, you would have said, you know,
But I never
I
saw them
drove
again.
by. I
Yep.
apologize, because you're that kind of guy,
I
right? And it would
I
have,
hope. I hope. I'm
yeah.
not sure, man. After that moment, I started questioning myself, saying, "Man, wow, you couldn't even stop." Now there were 100 other people that
Yeah, of
just drove by
course.
too, but I don't
Yeah,
care about them because I can't control what they do, right? I can control me,
exactly.
and I
Yeah.
think this is just a great, again example of, I think these moments we have. How do you think we could translate some of this over? I do want to touch a little bit on your book and just this idea of serving people, because you talk about selling in a great way. I love, I highlighted here in the opening where you talked about this feeling of many dread being viewed as the sleazy, money hungry, self serving types that have infiltrated the business of sales over the years. So there is that, and you
Mm.
touched on it, that perception of sales and uh, the feelings that we might have about sales and what we think others might be viewing us as now if we are in sales, right? There is that thought of, hey, how do people look at
Right.
me now? So
Yeah.
how do you push through that? How do you use some of these lessons of the shoulds and the moments of doing those small things? How could we tie that over to sales, you think?
Well, one of the things that jumps out at me is that we can't change the perception until we have the conversation.
Hmm.
So someone is going to view me like every other salesperson
Yeah.
in the world. It's like, you're in sales, they've already made a judgment. But that's okay. Once I have the conversation, they're going to see that I'm completely different.
Hmm.
And the only reason I'm completely different is the conversation is about them versus the conversation being about me. And when I make it about them and ask them questions and make eye contact and listen and acknowledge what they said, show some emotion and nod, my facial expressions are in tune with the conversation. I'm smiling if they're smiling. I'm very serious if they're serious. I'm very, like, I was speaking to a woman recently who was very down. I was very, very mellow, right? I
Hmm.
was there empathizing with her. I don't know how to fake that.
Hmm.
It's just like, this person is down. I'm not going to be all smiley and cheerful and say, get over it. I'm going to be relatable
Hmm.
and help her through whatever she's going through.
Interesting.
So
Hmm.
this is all part of it. It's all part of the servant mindset. But when people see that, it's like, I bought from you because you don't act like a salesperson.
Hmm.
And when you have people saying that over and over again in your life, it's like, yeah, I'm on to something.
Yeah.
It's just being a
Yeah.
human being and serving people. And, it's just that relatability, authenticity. People talk about vulnerability,
Yeah.
all of those things. I just thought about it as I'm there for that person without thinking I got to be authentic now. I've got to be genuine. It's none of that. It was I got to be there for this person, which probably came from the mission background.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you have that heart and that servant mindset. How do you, just thinking through some practical things of folks that are in the sales environment, which to a certain extent we're all in sales,
We are.
right, in many
Yeah.
ways, but how do you get to that conversation? As you know, that's the hard part. You were talking about, hey, when I get there in front of someone, they can see who I am and they can see that I'm different. But oftentimes the hardest part of sales is just getting that conversation to happen in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, you have to take action. The the challenge that many have is that they don't want to make a call, they don't want to
Mm-hmm.
send an email, they don't want to go up to a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do that. There's no, you
Yeah,
just have to go up
for
with a
sure.
certain mindset. You just change your mindset and say, I've got to do this. And it's sort of like everyone who has a job is getting paid by an employer is in sales.
Yeah,
They interviewed for that job selling themselves.
right.
They are trying to get promotions selling themselves. They are trying to have influence in the company selling themselves. Asking for some favors, selling themselves, all of that. You're in sales, everybody is.
Mm.
Whether you're selling your ideas, you're pitching your beliefs, sales is
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. But we don't notice it. It's very natural for us. So if we could say, I've been selling my entire life, really, I sold my teachers, I sold, I sold a coach that I could be on the team. We do these things. We say it's actually pretty natural. I just need to adapt it for business.
Mm.
And when we do it, we say, I want to do my own thing. You can't do it without selling. So we have to get over the fear by looking back at our past successes, is what I do, and say, I've
Mm.
done it before. I've
Mm-hmm.
applied for jobs. I sold myself. I got nice
Mm-hmm.
salaries or wages. I can do this. I'm not anything different. I just have to do it from a servant mindset and get over the fear of talking to strangers and
Yeah.
people are nice. So I'm just going to talk to people, be nice to them, smile, ask how their day is, and it'll all work out. So
Yeah.
really that simple.
You make it sound so easy,
It
Harry.
is.
Sale,
Yeah, exactly. It's just
yeah.
like that.
Sales made easy. The
Yeah,
podcast.
right.
See, come
There you
on.
go.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
One more thought on that is, what about rejection? Obviously, that's a
Yeah.
huge thing for salespeople, for any of us, again, just dealing with rejection. But obviously, if you're in that true selling environment, you face that a lot. How have you handled that over the years, and how has it evolved, if at all, to where you you just,
I
no one loves
laugh.
to get rejected,
Right.
but maybe it
Yeah.
becomes a little easier. Just curious.
Yes. I don't remember exactly, but going from door to door,
Mm,
selling to
door to door,
businesses is
door to
what I
door.
did.
Mm.
Door to door in businesses, not house to house.
Oh, in business. Okay.
Yeah.
Still door to door though.
But
Yeah.
door to door in residential is different
Yeah.
because you're really at risk
Oh man.
of getting whatever shot in Florida or something, right?
Definitely
But
yelled at. Yeah.
in business, it's they expect it, right? They expect for strangers to come in and they're going to say, I'm all set, we're
Yeah.
not interested, and
Yeah.
it's they don't know me. I mean, I'm going to smile, but they have no idea who I am. I'm viewed like every other salesperson. So I have to remember that I'm like every other salesperson. So I'm going to find the friendly people. Eventually, just say, I'm going to find the friendly people.
Hmm.
And the friendly people will want to do business with me. People who are not friendly, that don't like me, well, all right, there's enough friendly people that will like me. That's kind of what I did. So I just
So
look for the friendly, look for the
it's
friendly
this
people.
idea of just pushing through the no's and the rejection to get to the people that I want to connect with.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
will be receptive to
Exactly.
me and my message.
100%. And people who are, it's, we're not interested. We're all set. That's really as bad as it gets. They're not saying get out of here or we're going to
Yeah,
punch you. Right. It's just,
right. It's the standard
it's, we're
line.
all
Yes.
set.
Well
We're
said.
not interested. Or
Yep.
did you see the sign on the door? Because back, there's a lot of no soliciting signs. And I would
Yes.
say, well, I didn't think that was for me. I thought it was for people who are actually selling. I'm not selling anything today. I'm not carrying flowers or candy in here to sell. I'm here to find out who makes your decisions regarding this before the internet. Right. And
That's a
then,
great line, though.
yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
that's a great way to handle that, because that is a thing that people obviously face, is this immediate wall, right? Now we're
Yeah.
good, don't need you. There's a sign. And so there's not even that opportunity to engage.
Yeah. And if you look the part, you go in presentable, respectful,
Yeah.
apologetically almost.
Hmm.
Not that we apologize for, but it's not with ego,
It's not with ego. Yep.
right?
There's some humility
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
exactly.
Makes all the difference. Wow, this is
Yeah.
great. I told you, before we started recording, see, I know you just looked at the clock and you said, man, this is good. We got to come on, let's get going. And
This
then
has been a half an hour.
we talked about time, and we're still trucking. So we'll try to wrap this up here to be sensitive to your time and everyone else's. But this has been helpful and really insightful in so many ways. But I did want to bring it home to where you are now. Obviously, you've touched on a lot of this, uh, potential, the shoulds, you know, this idea of moving towards what maybe that voice that you're hearing to say, hey, you should be doing this. This is your passion, your calling. Write the book. We come out of COVID, finally, thankfully, and now it's a little bit of a new world out there where the content, it really is exploded out there, and the social platforms, and you've really jumped on that. So can you talk about what you're up to today, and really how you're helping people in the sales world and the business world, and what your passion is now, and just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. What you gave, this has led to a speech I will be writing, which is going to be something like turn the shoulds into do,
There you
something
go.
along those lines.
I'll take
Right.
all the
Take,
credit for that.
yes, you'll get half the royalties. Um,
I
so
love
yeah, so what I do is I work with people who want to grow their sales without being pushy.
it.
It's really that simple. So they can focus on their business with growth versus starving. Because if you're not good in sales, your business isn't going to survive. It's
Yeah.
just you have to sell in order to succeed. So whether that be through coaching, workshops, seminars, or speaking, those are the things that you can find me at harry@sellingwithdignity.com. And we can have a chat and talk about if
Yeah,
there's a way to serve you.
that's great. And obviously the Sales Made Easy podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm see all these people you're bringing on. You got great folks that I'm sure are bringing a lot of wisdom and tactical tips and ideas to help people, right?
Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
some great guests. We won't go into all of them, but scroll through that. Liz Wendling, Colin Smith talks about listening. Liz Wendling talks about, what are some key words you can use or to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Servant mindedness, right? Those are the topics I really love.
Great. So be sure to check that out. As we close, I wanted to ask you, is there something you would encourage folks to take action on as it relates to our conversation and this idea of an idea they have, a goal they have, a vision, a prompting? What's a step that people can take, and just thinking through what you've done? And because again, sometimes it's just getting started and moving in the direction toward your desired future.
Yeah.
How do you do
Yeah.
that? What do you think?
I think the first thing is that once you recognize what it is that you said I should do, is you need to get out your phone, your computer, and Google steps to become, and just look at what I can do.
Hmm.
And if you know somebody that's doing it, you have a conversation and say, I want to do this. I remember
Hmm.
we had a guy on a podcast, and Daniel Gomez is his name. It's a motivational speaker. And he came on the podcast. This is another one of those things I said, I should call that guy. So shortly after the podcast, I called Daniel and I said, dude, I want to do what you're doing.
Hmm.
I love what you're doing. I want to do that. And he says, you need to come to my boot camp. And, I spent some money, but it opened up my world, right? If I didn't spend the money and I didn't go, I could have said, no, that's too much. I don't want to make an investment. I just said, I want to do what you do. And the person says it's going to cost you money. Am I going to say, well, it's not worth it? To me, it was worth it. And it's changed. This is all part of the whole change. I can't say that changed my life. It helped throughout the whole process, right? It gave me some clarity as to what the end game was. I wasn't there yet, and I still had some work to do internally. But at that point, going through spending the time with him, having him in my circle of influence was definitely a game changer for me.
Hmm.
So it might be finding a coach, someone who is doing what you want to do,
Hmm.
and you might say, I don't want to spend the money. That may prevent you from doing what you want to do. It's just the way it is. Right? I
Yeah.
can't explain why that is. I spent money to become a stand-up, do the stand-up. I just spent a few $100s. I
Hmm.
spent money on coaching to become a speaker. I spent money along the way. And the money is just an investment into my future. And that's the way I looked at it.
That's a great perspective. I think we have to recognize the reality of that we've got to make an investment in what we really want to do. Whether it is money, it's time.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a lot of things, but I think your point's well taken. And I like that idea of another person. It just goes back to what we were talking earlier of some accountability, some encouragement. Maybe it is a formal relationship and a coaching, but could also be someone in your life that you're saying, hey, I'm wanting to do this, and I need you to help encourage,
Right.
and even challenge me toward that goal, because otherwise I might just talk about what I'm going to do,
Exactly.
not what I am doing.
Yeah.
It's this idea of action today, even if it's small, it's moving in the direction of where we want to go. And so I think that's a huge part of this. So any final thoughts, anything else we didn't cover that you think would be helpful as we
Yeah.
wrap?
I just say it would take that first step.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, take a step towards that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ignore the should part.
Hmm.
Once you say, I should give up whatever, or I should lose this, or I should start this, go see how to do that. And then start taking, okay, so what are the steps I need? You can Google, what are the steps I need to lose weight? What are the steps I need to do to start a podcast? What are the steps I need to learn to play the guitar? What are the steps I need to do stand-up comedy? What are the steps I need to do skits? What are the steps I need, right? I have interests in other things. It's like, okay, a thought came across my mind today um, about sketch comedy.
Hmm.
And I'm sharing that because now I'm curious. It's like I would like to do that where you're on stage with other people,
Mm.
sharpening each other. I forgot what they call it.
Is it
Improv.
improv? Yeah, it sounds like
Yes,
improv.
improv.
Yeah, which
And
honestly is terrifying to me.
yeah, but
Improv.
what's your thought about it though?
Well, because I'm imagining getting up there, one looking like a fool, because improv is you have no idea what's coming, and you've got to
Yeah,
adapt now, and you have to improvise, and
yeah,
you've got to keep it going. And honestly, just that whole thought, yeah,
it's
it
scary.
doesn't bring warm and fuzzy feelings for
No, no, no.
me.
But it's funny to watch others do it,
It is
right? And
hysterical.
they're no different than the rest of us. They
Oh,
just put themselves out and they rehearse,
yeah,
right? So there's practice behind the scenes. No one's
sure.
going on stage in front of an
Oh,
audience doing it for the first time, right? That's what we think sometimes, but it's like if I want to sing whatever that
yeah,
creativity is, we have half of our brain that says focus on creativity, and a lot of us dismiss it and say no, I want to focus on the mundane because that's
yeah,
easy. But we could go on forever.
man, great
Sorry
stuff.
about that, but
No,
yes,
no,
take a step, folks. Take a
take a step.
step. Good things will happen when you do.
Absolutely. Thanks, Harry. This has been fun and challenging and uh, vulnerable and all kinds of good things, but encouraging too. I think
Awesome.
hopefully it's encouraging to all of us that we can we can still act on our goals and our dreams. It's never too late, and we just got to take that step. So appreciate your time. Go find Harry online, sellingwithdignity.com. He's all over social media as well, and putting out really great content. So thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a blast.